people. You may not know what a spinning bait is, but it is it's shiny and pretty. It's got metal things on it, and might have some beads on it. It has feathers, and it kind of spins in the water, and it attracts the fish, hopefully. But at the end of it is a barb. And that's what a parable is like. It's like shiny with all kinds of things in it that could distract you or bring you to it. And at the end, there is a barb that catches you. And there's lots of ways to look at this parable this morning. When you consider the area of politics and how can you avoid politics, we're in Iowa and it's caucus season. Or in the area of sports, or in sales, there's a lot of us and them to talk to be found. Our team is better than your team. My candidate in the elections is, this product is better than all the other leading brands. Those are obvious comparisons. But there are subtler ways we make comparison that carry a lot of biases. Those who live on the other side of the tracks, or here in Cedar Rapids, those that live on the other side of the river. The other kind of people, the profile that has become both assumed but is officially denied in national security matters. I am humbled and I am ashamed to say I got my first apartment because of bias. The landlord said, "I'm so glad that you came along, otherwise I would have had to rent to a black couple." What I should have done at that moment was to tell the landlord I wouldn't rent from him and let the black couple get the apartment and with humility explain why. But I didn't. I was complicit in an unjust system of bias. Or you have heard in the midst of conflicts, if you're not with us, you're against us. The us and them mindset seems to be part of what it means to be human. Not something to be proud of, but to be vigilant to overcome it. And somehow I don't think we can avoid comparisons. While I think social media is a great way to stay connected. I'm not sure what I would do without Facebook sometimes, how I would keep track of my sisters and the pumpkin carving they did yesterday and the day before. But it's also fertile ground for comparisons. We almost always put our best stories and what we look like. And it can be unfair, and I know teenagers really suffer from that. As long as we live in community and relationships, we will always be in a me, you, us, them relationship. The Pharisee and the tax collector were definitely from different parts of the community. Pharisees are not inherently bad. The role of the Pharisee was about helping the community to live the life-giving law of Moses, helping the community stay closer to God. That was their role. At least that was the intended role of the Pharisee. The caricature of the Pharisee in this parable might have brought a smile even to the faces of the real Pharisees that got to hear it in the first century. Fasting twice a week, giving a tenth of everything that he has acquired would have been an obvious, over-the-top example of a do-gooder. Imagine being at a church council meeting, and the lay leader or the pastor says they wake up every morning praying for everyone in the congregation by name, grew their own food, sewed their own clothes, did not purchase from regularly, rested well, and exercised regularly, and dared not to even consider watching any trashy TV shows, gave generously to movements that centered all the right people, and still managed to floss daily. I think you would probably chuckle. You would chuckle and say, yeah, right. Though we all may be striving with sincerity to be just, the extremity of devotion, the extreme sense of devotion is nearly impossible to live in a world like ours or theirs. But through this caricature, we get the point about who this Pharisee was and what they were about. They are the very image of the most earnest part of ourselves, even when it's challenging. And the Pharisee is thankful that he is able to do this. He is only able to do this through the grace of God. Now, a tax collector worked on behalf of the oppressor, which is the Roman government. Remember, these are oppressed people. Tax collectors were known to extort more taxes than they were owed. While a member of this community, so the tax collector was a member of the community, his role was the opposite of helping the community. So while the Pharisee was supposed to be about helping the community, the tax collector was not about. That wasn't his purpose. The tax collector is so ashamed of his own behavior, he stands at a distance. The opposite extreme is communicated. Someone who has had such little concern, or at least has not acted out of concern for his community, that he can barely lift his eyes in prayer. So the very earnest part of us, sincerely committed to recognizing our actions of harm to ourselves, our neighbors, and in unfaithfulness to our beliefs, he realizes that he hasn't measured up. That is also part of us. When we recognize we have not measured up to the best of what we wanted. Several years ago now, Jim and I got to hear Dr. Amy Levine, a professor of New Testament at Vanderbilt, speak about the Gospel of Luke. She is proficient in Hebrew and Greek, and her translation of this passage gives a slightly different insight into the interconnectedness between the lives of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The both and of them. She says specifically in verse 18, could be easily translated to say, to you I say, descending to his house, this one is justified alongside of that one. Or even, to you I say, descending to his house, this one is justified because of this one. The Greek in this is unclear and leaves us with the choice on how we will interpret the Pharisee. When I consider the translation offered by Amy Levine of verse 18, that would make it so that the tax collector is technically justified or forgiven because of the actions of the Pharisee. Wow. Our faith, what that has to do with us, is our faith is collective, and our lives are so entangled that the harm or the good of one affects the whole. We hold each other's sins. We make up for each other's actions. We tend to the needs caused by each other's harmful behaviors. We have somehow managed to make this whole community thing work when we are willing to show up that way. This parable helpful in its extremes because there are so few among us who couldn't sincerely identify with one alone. In the way that our lives, our privileges, our passions set us up to be Pharisees on and in certain aspects of our life. We make up for the harm of our neighbors by offering the extra we can to the common good. In the way that our lives, our privileges, our passions set us up to be tax collectors, making us complicit in all kinds of systems that do harm to us and our neighbors. It's only by grace we are perpetually invited into salvation. When I remember that we are both, that we are continuously in this dance of pride and humility, we become aware of the opportunity to care for our communities despite the individuals, and aware of the way our communities care for us despite ourselves. This both and understanding of self is really important. It keeps us humble. It keeps us focused on community. It keeps us forgetting that systems are the real source of harm, and we can change them together. When white folks sincerely recognize our complicity with white supremacy, when cis folks sincerely desire to be supportive of trans people, when straight folks sincerely desire to start perpetuating harm against queer folk in the church, it means something. It matters. Sincerity, intention matters. It's not everything, but it's also not nothing. In this moment, at least, the tax collector is thinking of himself in relationship to the community, how he has affected the community and the common good, just as the Pharisee is. In this way, they're both justified. Whenever we sincerely show up to collective life together with the community in mind, with honesty about what we have to offer and what we must still change about ourselves, about our behaviors, about our prejudices, about our biases, recognizing that God and our need for God's grace and guidance in doing so, Jesus suggests in this parable that we will all find ourselves, no matter who we are, we're all equals with God. And that's good news.